Te encuentras en Siniestros, Relatos. Este lugar sombrío y tétrico alberga historias tan espeluznantes que harán que tu respiración se entrecorte y tu corazón palpite desesperadamente. Aquí, en la profundidad de la noche, los relatos cobran vida propia, revelando pesadillas que ningún ser humano debería enfrentar jamás. El horror aguarda pacientemente, escondido en cada palabra pronunciada, esperando para atraparte desprevenido y arrastrarte hacia el abismo de la desesperación más profunda. Escucha con atención si te atreves. Never anticipate the precise moment your ordinary existence splinters, revealing the abyss beneath. For me, it arrived not with a thunderclap, but with the chilling pressure of machine steel against the vulnerable curve of my neck, a visceral punctuation mark ending the simple query, "Destination?" Silas, that's the name I answer to. For a year, give or take, I'd navigated the city's nocturnal labyrinth piloting fares for Lumina Ride. It wasn't ambition's calling, merely a necessary drudgery, this gig economy hustle financing textbooks and sustenance, while the university claimed my days. Most shifts dissolved into a predictable rhythm, ferrying boisterous collegians awash in cheap liquor, extracting exhausted professionals from fluorescent-lit cages, occasionally guiding bewildered out-of-towners. Routine, until that sodden Friday shattered the pattern. Midnight had bled into the nascent Saturday. Weariness tugged at my eyelids. The siren song of home beckoned. Then a final ping illuminated the screen, pulsing with surge-inflated promise too lucrative to ignore. Acceptance dispatched me toward the pickup point, a neglected street corner submerged in shadow, its lone streetlight sputtering fitfully in a neighborhood geography had taught me to skirt. There he stood, beneath the faltering incandescence, tall, lean, swallowed by a dark hoodie tugged low, obscuring his features. An unsettling stillness clung to him, a dissonant chord in the night's rhythm, but I stifled the nascent alarm. Prejudice was poor currency in this trade. He folded himself into the back seat, bringing an olfactory miasma of damp asphalt and stale tobacco smoke. "Appreciate the stop," he offered, his voice a low rasp, like stones grinding together. "Not everyone ventures out this way." A strained approximation of a smile stretched my lips as I met his gaze in the rearview mirror. Dark, piercing eyes locked onto mine, sending an involuntary tremor skittering down my vertebrae. "No worries," I managed, striving for nonchalance. "Where are we headed?" He murmured coordinates, far flung from the city's familiar grid, an address nestled an hour distant. Uncharted territory, certainly, but the fare shimmered enticingly. I fed the destination to the navigation system, its digital voice a stark contrast to the man's gravelly tones, and eased the sedan away from the curb. Silence descended, thick and palpable, punctuated only by the hypnotic metronome of the windshield wipers battling the insistent rain, a percussive tattoo on the roof. The road demanded my attention, yet I felt his scrutiny like a physical weight, tracking every minor adjustment of the wheel, every glance at the mirrors. "So," I ventured, the quiet amplifying my unease, desperate to fray the tension's taut wire. Business or pleasure bringing you to the sticks on a night like this? The pause stretched, yawning into an uncomfortable void where I suspected my question had simply evaporated unheard. When he finally responded, his words were icicles plunged directly into my bloodstream. "Running," he stated flatly, "from something ugly." My grip tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles bleaching white against the worn leather. "Oh?" The syllable escaped as a faint squeak. "Like..." He leaned forward, his proximity invasive, his breath warm against my ear. "The law," he whispered, the sound conspiratorial, chilling, "did something unforgivable. They're hunting." A frantic drumbeat thundered against my ribs, surely audible over the engine's hum. I fought to keep my voice from fracturing. What was it you did?" He settled back against the seat. I could almost hear the grim amusement curving his unseen lips. "Why don't you find a spot to pull over? I can illustrate." Primal alarms shrieked through my consciousness. Flee, accelerate, vanish. But the highway unfurled before us, a desolate ribbon flanked by skeletal trees, offering no sanctuary, no escape route. That doesn't seem wise," I stammered, the words clumsy. "Perhaps I should just complete the fare." His hand shot forward, clamping onto my shoulder with startling, wiry strength. "Pull! Over! Now!" Obedience felt like the only currency left. I guided the car onto the slick, muddy verge. The moment the engine idled, the cold, hard reality pressed against the back of my neck. No need to look. The universal language of a gun barrel is unmistakable. "All right," he commanded, his voice unnervingly level, stripped of inflection. "Here's the new itinerary. Exit the vehicle, slow and deliberate. Then you get in the back. I'm driving." My thoughts splintered, frantic calculations colliding against the cold reality pressed to my skull. Options dwindled to zero. Unbuckling felt like severing a final link to control. I pushed the door open, stepping out into the relentless downpour. As I circled toward the rear passenger door, the brief flare of the interior dome light caught his face. His eyes were wide, feral, pupils dilated into black pools. Whatever specter pursued him, whatever transgression stained his past, its shadow now fully enveloped me. I was ensnared. He slid behind the wheel, the weapon never wavering from my direction. "Phone!" he barked, a sharp, non-negotiable order. I surrendered it, watching numbly as he lowered the window and flung my digital lifeline into the consuming darkness. Back on the highway, a different kind of dread settled in, cold and suffocating. "Look," I began, my voice betraying me with a tremor I couldn't suppress. "This isn't necessary. I won't say a word, I promise. Just let me walk away." A harsh bark of laughter, devoid of mirth, echoed in the confined space. "Too late, friend. You're part of the narrative now, like it or not." The next hour unfolded in a suffocating tableau of tense silence. Familiar suburban sprawl dissolved into undulating hills, then dense, encroaching forests. We climbed steadily into the mountains, leaving civilization and any prospect of aid far behind. Finally, he wrenched the wheel, turning onto a barely discernible dirt track swallowed by the gloom. The car bucked and lurched, ascending deeper into the untamed wilderness, until a dilapidated cabin materialized through the rain-streaked windshield. "Out!" he ordered, the gun emphasizing the command. The cabin's interior exhaled neglect. Bare boards, skeletal furniture, a table, 2 chairs, a rudimentary kitchenette clinging to one wall. He gestured me towards a chair before commencing a restless patrol of the small space, muttering fragmented sentences under his breath. "What happens to me now?" The question felt pathetic, small against the backdrop of his contained chaos. He halted his pacing, pinning me with that unnerving, intense gaze. "Undecided," he replied coolly. "Depends entirely on your level of cooperation." Time warped and buckled. Hours bled together, marked only by his erratic shifts in demeanor. He oscillated wildly, volcanic eruptions of paranoia fueled by whispered conspiracies about unseen persecutors, segueing into unnerving pools of quietude. I attempted conversation, seeking purchase, some fragile human connection, but navigating his psyche was like traversing a minefield. One moment, a flicker of something almost resembling normalcy. The next, the cold kiss of the gun against my temple, as he accused me of collaborating with them. Then, as dawn painted the grimy window panes with bruised, tentative light, a sound pierced the oppressive stillness. Sirens. Distant, initially faint, but undeniably growing closer, louder. My captor heard them too, his face twisted into a mask of pure fury. "You!" he snarled, lunging towards me. "You signaled them, somehow." Frantically, I shook my head. "No, I swear. How? My phone. You threw it out." Reason, however, had long fled the premises. He seized me, hauling me violently upright. "We're moving, now!" He propelled me towards the door, the gun digging painfully into my spine. But as we stumbled across the threshold, salvation appeared. A phalanx of police cruisers ascending the muddy track, their emergency lights slicing through the pre-dawn murk. The world fractured into strobe-lit chaos. My captor screamed incoherently, yanking me forward, a desperate human shield. Shouted commands echoed from the tree line. "Drop the weapon!" Then a sharp, deafening report split the air. Impact. I sprawled onto the wet earth, the force expelling the air from my lungs. A fleeting, terrifying thought. I'm shot. Dissolved as breath returned in ragged gasps. Unharmed. A few feet away, my captor lay still, a dark stain blooming rapidly beneath him. The subsequent hours blurred into a disorienting montage of paramedics, blankets smelling faintly of antiseptic, probing questions from uniformed officers, and the lingering tremors of shock. I learned his name, Julian Thorne, a fugitive wanted across 3 states for a litany of violent offenses. My overdue status, my sudden digital disappearance, had triggered the alert, the manhunt culminating precisely here, at his remote sanctuary. Cocooned in the back of an ambulance, watching the sun crest the mountain peaks, the sheer weight of the ordeal began its crushing descent. I had gazed into the void, and somehow, inexplicably, stepped back. but the return journey felt irrevocably altered. Re-entry into the mundane proved a fractured ascent in the weeks that followed. Every vehicle idling beside me at an intersection sparked a jolt of adrenaline. Each notification chime from my new phone sent phantom electricity through my nerves. Driving for Lumina Ride again? Unthinkable. Driving at all felt like tempting fate. Yet slowly, painstakingly, buttressed by therapy's steady hand and the unwavering support of friends and family, healing began its quiet work. The simple act of breathing became its own quiet triumph. Recognizing that fortitude isn't the absence of fear, but the courage to proceed despite it. Nightmares still ambushed my sleep. Sudden noises still made me flinch, but I was reclaiming territory, inch by painful inch. My experience found an unexpected outlet. Volunteering at a crisis hotline, offering a hand to others navigating their own dark passages. And on the first anniversary of that night, etched forever in fear, I performed an act of deliberate defiance. I drove, alone, back towards those same mountains, not to court the ghosts of terror, but to measure the distance traveled within myself. Standing there, surveying the vast, indifferent wilderness that had briefly been my prison, an unexpected tranquility settled over me. The path forward remained uncertain, potentially fraught, but the knowledge resonated deep within. I possessed the resilience to meet whatever lay ahead. Because the most profound journeys I now understood aren't always charted on maps. Sometimes they simply lead you back home to a stronger, more weathered, but undeniably enduring version of yourself. Last Tuesday, I exhumed it. Should have left that cathode ray monstrosity entombed in the basement's Stygian clutch, draped in dust thicker than velvet, festooned with the lacework of spiders. A fool's choice. Now slumber evades me, sustenance turns to ash in my mouth, and behind my eyelids, the screen's spectral glow persists, projecting the shape of what slithers toward my waking dread. This house, a siren song of clapboard and cheap promise. 3 beds, 2 baths, a patch of indifferent lawn. A foreclosure's kiss, too good to ignore. The previous occupants. Evaporated, the realtor shrugged, leaving behind ghosts of furniture and unpaid bills. Their misfortune, my foundation. Ink dried on the deed a fortnight ago. That first twilight, I descended into the subterranean chill, flashlight beam carving through the gloom, charting territory for a future workshop. Then the beam snagged. A convex glass eye, a faux wood sarcophagus, twin antennae like skeletal rabbit ears, television, vintage, perhaps the 70s. Its gravity was astonishing. Wrestling it felt like dislodging a headstone. Curiosity, that fatal itch, compelled me. Does it still dream? 20 minutes yielded a cleaner facade and a live socket. The power button depressed with a brittle click. Against all expectation, life flared. Static hissed like escaping gas. The screen spasmed, then coalesced into an image. My own basement stared back. Unmistakable concrete weeping stains, the same load-bearing pillars, the identical washer squatting against the far wall. Yet not quite. This wasn't reflection. The washing machine in this spectral broadcast was an ancestor to mine. The perspective skewed, high and watchful, a spider's vantage from the ceiling's corner. A timestamp bled in the lower right. Euro 6th, 1994, 3:47 a.m. The image swam with the grainy pallor of ancient surveillance tapes. Minutes stretched, taut and silent within the frame. Then a disruption in the shadowed recess behind the washer. A hand bloomed from the dark. Fingers like bleached twigs, skin stretched parchment thin over alien bone. An arm followed, impossibly emaciated. A shoulder blade jutting like a broken wing. A head. The entity extruded itself into the weak light. It moved quadrupedally, yet its gait defied all animalian comparison, limbs bending at obscene, unnatural vertices. Its skull swiveled perpetually backward as it advanced, its visage locked onto the unseen lens. The face, dear God. Vacant sockets, smooth, unblemished skin where eyes should be. A mouth stretched into a gash far too wide, bristling with needle-fine dentition. It scuttled, fluid and horrifying, toward the basement stairs. The scene fractured, reformed. The living room, timestamp unaltered. Through the Stygian murk, the creature flowed, a pale nightmare investigating each room, a predator mapping its domain. My thumb hammered the power button. Futile. I ripped the plug from the wall. The image held, luminous and mocking. The thing completed its ground floor reconnaissance, then began its ascent. Another jarring cut. A bedroom. Within the bed, the vague shapes of a sleeping man and woman. The creature paused, observing, its head canted at an angle that spoke of dislocation. Then it smiled, a crescent moon of infinite malice. A strangled cry tore from my throat as I seized the television, heaving its impossible weight, dashing it against the concrete floor. The screen fractured, a spiderweb of cracks marring the glass, but the vision persisted beneath the damage. And then the thing on the screen turned its eyeless face toward the lens, toward me. Its maw stretched, wider, swallowing the frame, collapsing reality into an impossible void. The screen died. Blackness. I fled upstairs, barricading myself in the master bedroom, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Sleep was a forgotten country. Dawn's gray fingers revealed an empty space on the basement floor where the TV had stood. Only shards of broken glass remained, glittering like malevolent frost. But the haunting wasn't over. It had merely changed venue. Now peripheral flickers dance at the edge of my sight. Chitinous scrapings echo within the walls when darkness falls. And sometimes, Narcissus-like, I catch a reflection in polished surfaces. Something standing just behind my shoulder. Something pallid. Something grinning. Last night, yellowed newsprint surfaced from a forgotten box. June 15th, 1994. Local couple vanishes without trace. The names matched the deed. Before them, another couple swallowed by the house. And before them, a lineage of disappearances. The scraping intensifies. It emanates from below, from the basement's concrete throat. I know its source, its patient vigil. I understand the narrative arc closing around me. Departure is impossible. The house holds me fast, an unwilling participant. The lights just expired, plunging everything into absolute dark. My phone, a dead weight in my hand. Footsteps, no, something more deliberate, a crawling ascent. Sound on the basement stairs, slow, measured, testing the integrity of each tread. It seeks me now, as it sought the others down the years. If these words find you, heed them. Avoid this place. Shun forgotten electronics moldering in shadowed cellars. Some artifacts are best left undisturbed in their dusty graves. The doorknob is rotating, slowly. I see its silhouette, stark beneath the door's gap. I can almost hear its smile, a soundless stretching in the dark. It has arrived. Forgive me, this was written in haste, under duress. An instruction whispered from the shadows. Warn them. The presence in the television. It propagates through the telling, an informational contagion. To know of it is to be marked by it, to become visible. I have sealed my fate, and I fear, implicated yours. Resist the urge to scrutinize the deep corners of your room. And whatever you value, do not turn around. It is already behind you. Nocturnal disturbances never troubled my thoughts before. A house groans, the wind sighs. Mundane explanations always sufficed. That comfortable certainty evaporated weeks after the dust settled from renovating the old family home, a place steeped in the quiet history of my grandparents before descending to me. It's a modest, single-story structure, yet the recent demolition of walls, the expansion of the living space, the modernization of its vital systems, plumbing, electrics, lent it an unexpected spaciousness, particularly for a solitary occupant like myself. Months of clamor and chaos yielded a result I surveyed with distinct pride. Then the unsettling began. Methodical by nature, I thrive on order within my domain. One evening, midnight having chimed, I concluded my viewing. Lights extinguished, I performed my nightly ritual, a circuit of the doors, confirming each was securely latched or shut. My bedroom lies down a brief corridor, flanked by the bathroom and a small guest room. Habit dictates keeping the guest room door closed. Its vacancy offers no reason for it to stand open. That night, the memory is crystalline. I pushed it shut, felt the distinct click of the latch engaging. Then to my own room, its door closed behind me, and sleep. Around the stark hour of 3 a.m., biology called. Silence reigned. The hallway remained unlit, save for the faint beacon of a nightlight in the far bathroom, a necessary guide. Stepping into the corridor, my gaze snagged on a sliver of illumination bleeding from the guest room threshold. I halted. That door gaped wide. A dull, insistent pressure bloomed in my chest. I know I closed it. My hand instinctively sought the wall switch. The hallway blazed alight, confirming the impossible. The guest room door undeniably open. Yet nothing else seemed amiss. A glance inside revealed only emptiness, undisturbed surfaces, the quietude of an unused space. A shrug, a forced dismissal. Houses settle, warp, breathe in peculiar ways. Perhaps the latch hadn't fully caught. I pushed the door firmly, heard the latch reseat itself with satisfying finality, and retreated to bed. The incident leaving a faint residue of unease I tried to scrub from my mind. A few nights hence, the scenario repeated. This time, certainty was absolute. I had consciously felt the mechanism catch, lingered a moment to be sure. No ambiguity, no room for doubt. Yet rising for water near 2 a.m., I found it again. The guest room door swung silently open. My heart hammered against my ribs as I approached. I stood rooted in the hallway for a long minute, peering into the unlit void beyond the frame, straining to detect breath or movement. Nothing but silence answered, yet a peculiar tension coiled in my gut. Paranoia, I chided myself. Again I closed the door, jiggled the handle, verifying its fastness with meticulous care before returning to bed. Sleep, however, proved elusive, my mind endlessly replaying the image of that inexplicably open door. Daylight banished the shadows, restoring normalcy. Sunlight streamed through the panes, bathing familiar rooms in reassuring warmth. I scrutinized the door hinges. No expert, I nonetheless saw no obvious defect, no wobble or misalignment. A call was made to Finn, the carpenter whose hands had installed these very doors during the renovation. He arrived the following day, tools in hand, performing his assessment. He tightened screws, checked levels, tested the latch repeatedly. His verdict, flawless. The door was plumb, the hinges sound, the latch secure. No physical reason existed for it to open spontaneously. He departed, leaving me feeling faintly foolish. Had I overlooked some simple detail? Forgotten? Closed it while half asleep? These were the rationalizations I clung to. The third occurrence, near 3:15 in the morning, brought a new dimension. Not only was the guest room door ajar, but the bathroom door beside it also stood partly open. Both slightly breached, as if someone had passed between them. My throat constricted. My breathing grew shallow and rapid. A frantic check ensued. Windows secured, front and back entrances bolted. No sign of intrusion, nothing disturbed or stolen. Seeking composure, I splashed cold water on my face at the bathroom sink, the shock momentarily steadying. My reflection stared back, wide-eyed, questioning my sanity. Returning to the hallway, I closed both doors with deliberate care, the clicks echoing too loudly in the stillness. Sleep, when it finally came hours later, was fitful, fractured by hypervigilance. Every creak of the old house, once ignored, now sounded like a footfall, a warning. A week later, the noises commenced, not nightly, but frequent enough to fray my nerves. Lying in bed, attempting sleep, I'd hear it. A soft, intermittent tapping against my bedroom door. Gentle, persistent, like fingertips lightly drumming on the wood. Initially, I blamed the air conditioning, rattling pipes, the house's nocturnal symphony. But rising, pressing my ear to the panel, the tapping would invariably cease. Sometimes, however, a faint, residual vibration hummed through the wood, a brief tremor that sent prickles across my scalp and ignited a hot surge of adrenaline. Barefoot on the cool floor, heart pounding a frantic rhythm, I'd fling the door open, hoping to confront something. Each time the hallway yawned empty. Lights blazing revealed nothing, no trace, no disturbance, just vacant space. One night resolved to witness it. Hallway light extinguished, I stationed myself in the living room, television muted, a silent sentinel. The guest room door was shut, latched, and for good measure, locked from the inside using the small thumb turn. I waited, poised for revelation. Around 2:30, a faint creak split the silence. Not loud, but sharp enough to make me start. I froze the muted screen, listening intently. The sound emanated from the hallway. Cautiously, I rose, tiptoeing towards the corner, breathing shallowly, heart thudding in my ears. Peering around the edge, I stopped, dead. The guest room door remained closed, but the handle visibly shifted, a slight, hesitant jiggle, as if touched by an unseen hand. It didn't fully turn, just trembled momentarily. My chest tightened, making breath difficult. Then, stillness. I stared, transfixed, for what felt like an eternity. Finally stepping forward, I grasped the handle, yanked the door open. Empty. Pulse racing, a fine sheen of sweat cooling on my forehead. I entered, switched on the lamp. Closet vacant, windows locked. The air hung stale, tinged with the lingering ghost of renovation paint. I stood listening to the frantic tempo of my own breathing, but the house offered nothing more. Eventually, I switched off the lamp, retreated, closing the door behind me. Back in the living room, I noticed the tremor in my hands, the dryness in my mouth. Water from the fridge did little to quell the internal shaking. Sleep that night was a forgotten luxury. The following day demanded obsessive scrutiny. Flashlight in hand, I examined every millimeter of that cursed door. Hinges tight, wood uncracked. The latch clicked decisively, holding firm. I inspected the frame, the floor beneath, seeking warps, misalignments, any physical culprit. Nothing. A level confirmed the frame was true. The bathroom door, other interior doors, all passed inspection. I felt absurd, armed with tools and a haunted expression, but inaction was intolerable. Half convincing myself it must be some delayed settlement from the renovation yielded no evidence. Nightfall became synonymous with dread. Lying in bed, attempting to read, gentle knocks would sometimes sound against the hallway walls. Rhythmic, too distinct to ignore. I'd lower my book. "Hello?" I'd call into the silence. No reply. Listening harder, sometimes a faint, scuffling noise followed, like a hand brushing lightly against the plaster. Then profound silence once more. Scalp tingling, mouth parched, a subtle tremor running through my limbs. I'd rise. Peeking into the hallway sometimes revealed emptiness. Other times, one of the doors I knew I'd secured stood slightly ajar. A moment of paralysis would grip me. Advance or retreat? Invariably, I forced myself forward, flipping switches as I went. A slow, tense progression towards nothing. The instant I opened the door to investigate, the sounds vanished. After one particularly fraught night, I consulted a friend who'd done security work. Had I found footprints? Did I have an alarm? I explained the fenced perimeter, the secure locks, the motion-activated exterior lights. No one could approach undetected. His suggestion, indoor cameras. A logical step, perhaps, to capture an intruder or simply document the inexplicable. I acquired a pair, designed for interior surveillance, linked to my phone. One aimed squarely at the guest room door, the other covering the bathroom door and the hallway between. A third watched over the living room. That first night under surveillance offered a fragile sense of control, the camera's tiny indicator lights blinking like watchful eyes in the dark. Hallway light off, both doors closed, latched, locked internally. I settled into bed, phone nearby, awaiting motion alerts. Around 2 a.m., a faint click echoed from the corridor, followed by a soft creak. My stomach clenched. I snatched the phone. No notification. I accessed the live feed. The cameras displayed only the still, empty hallway. Nothing moved within their electronic gaze. Frowning, I listened again. Silence. Slipping quietly from bed, I eased my door open. The bathroom door stood open, just a crack. The guest room door remained shut. The camera, positioned perfectly, had registered nothing. Stepping forward, phone flashlight illuminating the scene, I confirmed the bathroom door was indeed breached by an inch, revealing a sliver of tile. Entering the hallway, I checked the camera again. Feed active, recording apparently functional, yet inexplicably untriggered. Pushing the bathroom door fully open revealed only darkness. A chill traced its way down my spine as I entered, half expecting a figure behind the shower curtain. Empty. Switching on the light confirmed my solitude. Legs unsteady, jaw tight, I returned to the hall, shut the door firmly, readjusted the camera's angle slightly. Sleep was a distant shore. The ensuing days fell into a maddening pattern. Doors discovered open despite absolute certainty they were closed. Soft knocks, gentle taps. That unsettling faint vibration felt through the wood when I dared press my ear against it. Each attempt to capture definitive proof on camera failed. The footage showed me pacing, opening doors, shining lights, but never the doors moving independently. It was eroding my sanity. I meticulously rechecked settings, tested the motion detection during daylight hours. They worked flawlessly then. Yet these subtle nocturnal events remained stubbornly unrecorded. A temporal pattern emerged. The activity clustered between 2 and 3 a.m., occasionally stretching towards 3:30. By day, silence. Doors remained steadfastly shut. If temperature fluctuations or humidity were the cause, why the specific pre-dawn window? Why not during the heat of the afternoon? The thought of calling Finn again surfaced, only to be dismissed. His answer would remain unchanged. This wasn't mechanical. I exist now in a state of weary acceptance. Sleep is attempted, but any sound jerks me awake, adrenaline instantly flooding my system. My arms tense, heart hammers as I walk that hallway corridor to check. Sometimes the tapping is so faint, I question my own senses. Other times its clarity is undeniable. No intruder has ever been seen, no evidence of forced entry found. Morning always brings a return to the mundane, the only lingering sign those doors found open that I know I secured. Explaining this to others is futile. Sympathy mixes with skepticism. They suspect exaggeration or paranoia. But it is happening. Living alone sharpens awareness. I am hyper-conscious of securing those doors. I've tested, replaced locks. The phenomenon persists. Logic offers no foothold. Countless nights spent attempting to witness, to record, have yielded nothing tangible. That faint vibration felt through the wood remains the most intimate, unnerving clue. A sense of gentle pressure from the other side, vanishing the instant the door is opened. Is it some echo of the renovation, some quirk of new materials settling, or something I've only just begun to notice in the altered quiet of the house? Finn insists the doors are sound. Questions multiply, answers remain elusive. All I know is the persistence of it, the gnawing unease that never fully dissipates. Each night I dread waking to find another door mysteriously open. A rational explanation must exist, I tell myself. A minuscule gap, an air pressure anomaly. But the definitive click of the latch undermines these theories. The house feels solid, new. It's maddening. For now, I endure. Sweaty palms still accompany my nightly patrols down that hallway. Ignoring the sounds is sometimes tempting, but the potent cocktail of fear and curiosity always compels me to look. I open doors that should be sealed, braced for a revelation that never comes, finding only empty space. That is my reality. Locking, checking, watching, only to find them open between 2 and 3 in the morning. Hearing taps, feeling vibrations, seeing nothing. It is profoundly unsettling, inexplicable, yet undeniably real. And with every occurrence, the fear surges anew, accompanied by the chilling thought, what if, one night, I open a door and something is finally looking back? That moment has yet to arrive. I am left with nights steeped in tension, mornings offering temporary relief, and the certainty that when darkness falls again, the taps, the clicks, the creaks, and the doors that refuse to stay closed will return. And I will wait. The genesis of my unraveling arrived not with a bang, but a whisper, breathed through the grill of a forgotten wireless in my grandfather Elias's attic. I recognized it instantly as a point of no return, though the abyss yawning beneath that moment remained mercifully veiled. That autumn afternoon held a crystalline sharpness, the air biting as I ventured into the labyrinthine upper reaches of Elias's bequeathed Victorian pile. 3 months he'd been gone, leaving this edifice crammed with relics and shadowed corners. Procrastination, born of sorrow and an unnamed prickling apprehension, had kept me away. Now navigating drifts of dust and forsaken chattels, my fingers grazed cold bakelite. From the detritus I excavated it, an antique wireless, a streamlined fossil from an age of static and valves. Impulse, sharp and illogical, made me seek a socket, plug it in, scarcely daring to hope for a spark of life across the decades. Static hissed, a serpent's breath, before coalescing. Through the crackle, a filament of sound emerged, tenuous, spectral. "Deliver us," it pleaded, a sigh lost in the ether. "The cipher. Unlock the passage." My grip faltered. A broadcast bleed through? Some meticulously crafted hoax? Yet as I strained to listen, the voice solidified, sharpened by desperation. "Elias, if this frequency finds you, haste is paramount. They stir. The umbral stalkers are close." A glacial current traced my spine. Elias, my grandfather, this spectral plea aimed across time, and these umbral stalkers. Before the questions could fully form, a sound resonated from below. Footfalls distinct, unhurried, echoing through the vacant house. Impossible. The locks were mine alone. Heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, I descended from the attic's dusty womb, the wireless clutched like a talisman. Silence reclaimed the lower floors, profound and unnerving. Then on the second-floor landing, a sight arrested my breath. Grandfather Elias's study, that perpetually locked chamber, the house's inner sanctum, stood fractionally open, a sliver of darkness inviting entry. Trepidation warred with compulsion. I yielded, pushing the heavy oak door inward. Inside, the familiar reigned, leather-bound spines marching along shelves, the sentinel armchair behind the colossal desk. Yet, my gaze snagged on an anomaly. There, speared by a lance of waning daylight upon the desk's polished surface, lay a diminutive key wrought from gold. My fingers, trembling, closed around it. It possessed an unexpected heft, a residual warmth suggesting recent contact. Along its shank, minuscule sigils swirled, fluid and cryptic, seeming to writhe just beyond the edge of comprehension. The wireless crackled anew, the voice stronger, resonant. "The cipher," it affirmed. "You hold it. Seek the passage now, before they perceive—" A sudden, inexplicable draft ghosted through the study, rustling papers, raisin gooseflesh. I pivoted, senses straining. Nothing. Yet, from the periphery of vision, a flicker, a patch of shade, impossibly dense, detached itself from the wainscoting, flowing like ink across the floorboards. A blink, and it vanished. But the image seared itself onto my retina. The umbral stalkers. Tangible. Here. Panic surged, a bitter tide in my throat. I fled the study, cascading down the main staircase, aiming for the sanctuary of the front door, the outside world. My hand reached for the brass knob, then froze. The key pulsed in my palm, a warm, rhythmic thrum, an insistent heartbeat. An intuition, potent and undeniable, rooted me to the spot. Departure was not an option. Not yet. My purpose lay within. Turning, I surveyed the grand entrance hall with an altered perspective. And there it was, concealed in masterful camouflage, a door I'd never consciously registered, its grain mimicking the surrounding panels flawlessly. At its heart, a small, intricate keyhole waited. With unsteady hands, I slid the golden cipher home. A perfect fit. A sequence of delicate clicks echoed as tumblers yielded. Silently, the hidden door swung inward, revealing stairs plunging into blackness. The wireless whispered a final imperative. Swiftly now. Enter. Illumination awaits. Drawing a ragged breath, I weighed the precipice. Retreat? Feign ignorance? Reclaim the hollow shell of my former existence? The thought dissolved. The path back had already crumbled. Destiny, or something akin to it, had claimed me. Resolute, I stepped across the threshold, descending into the waiting void. The door sealed itself behind me with a soft finality, engulfing me in absolute darkness. Yet as I continued my spiraling descent, a faint cerulean luminescence began to seep from the very stone, bathing the steps in an ethereal twilight. Deeper, ever deeper. The stairs corkscrewed into the earth's embrace until, abruptly, they terminated before another portal. This one, forged of some unfamiliar tenebrous metal, bore the same shifting sigils as the key. No lock required insertion this time. The moment my fingers brushed its cold surface, it swung open, unveiling a cavernous expanse beyond. What lay within shattered the bedrock of my perceived reality. The chamber throbbed with incandescent swirling energies and free-floating symbols, a living cartography of the cosmos made manifest. At its core stood a conclave of figures cloaked and hooded, their faces lost to shadow. And prone at their feet, unnervingly still, lay Elias. One figure turned towards me, lowering their hood. A gasp tore from my lungs. My mother, Serafina. Yet not entirely her. Her eyes were twin novas, alight with an ancient, unnerving brilliance. "Welcome, progeny," she intoned, her voice amplified, echoing with resonant power. "Your arrival was foreseen." Standing paralyzed, the wireless still incongruously warm against my chest, the realization struck. This was no endpoint, but a terrifying genesis. The life I'd inhabited was a facade. Elias wasn't gone, not in the conventional sense. Serafina was other, and I, Rowan, was inextricably woven into a tapestry far vaster, far stranger than my wildest imaginings. The figure bearing my mother's face extended a hand, palm upward. It is time you comprehended the truth of your bloodline, of the clandestine war waged across millennia, fought in the interstices of light and shadow. Hesitation gripped me, my mind reeling, fractured by the impossible sights, the spectral whispers. But the memory of the umbral stalkers, the urgency vibrating from the wireless, solidified my resolve. Whatever secrets lay buried within my family, whatever arcane conflict they were embroiled in, ignorance was no longer a refuge. I accepted her hand. As our fingers touched, the very fabric of the chamber dissolved. Visions flooded my consciousness. Clandestine battles scarring history's hidden pages, lunar rituals under ancient skies, sacrifices made to hold encroaching voids at bay. I witnessed my lineage, face after face, generation upon generation, each playing their part in this silent, enduring struggle. And then my own reflection surfaced in a pool of shimmering light, older, marked by trials, eyes haunted by profound knowledge. A potential future I understood instinctively, a destiny offered, not imposed. The torrent subsided, leaving me back in the resonant chamber, encircled by the silent, hooded assembly. Serafina, or the entity inhabiting her form, offered a faint, knowing smile. "Now you perceive," she stated simply. "The decision rests with you. Will you embrace this inheritance, perpetuate the vigil, or avert your gaze, consign this revelation to the realm of nightmare?" My gaze swept the chamber, lingering on the dancing sigils, the cosmic glow. I recalled the creeping dread, the radio's desperate plea, the years spent cocooned in blissful unawareness. There was only one path forward. "I accept," I declared, my voice steadier than the tremor in my soul. "Show me what must be done." As the words resonated in the charged air, a palpable shift occurred. The hooded figures inclined their heads in unison. On the floor, Elias stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. "Thus, it commences," he rasped, his tone frail yet imbued with fierce pride. "The unfolding of our family's next age." I drew myself up, squaring my shoulders against the unknown weight of this legacy. Whatever trials awaited, whatever darkness loomed, I would face it. The mundane world had irrevocably slipped away, replaced by a reality steeped in shadow wars and ancient power. Fear lingered, but it no longer held dominion. For now, at long last, I grasped the shape of my true self. My own apartment. I never thought it could breed disquiet. This 7th-floor unit, chosen for its attainable rent and passable dimensions, offered a view, mostly just the indifferent street yawning below. The building itself is a relic, its floors prone to groaning underfoot, its hallway paint flaking like sunburnt skin. The elevator cage shudders ascending, lobby lights perform frantic, flickering dances. None of it pricked my nerves before. Settled in months ago, life unfolded predictably until a fortnight passed. It was a Wednesday, the clock bleeding past 10. Cocooned on the sofa, living room steeped in shadow, I drifted through some flickering late-night broadcast. The window frames an empty lot across the asphalt river, a void offering little spectacle. Habit dictates the curtains remain drawn after dusk. The proximity of the adjacent building, a stack of anonymous windows, invites a certain caution. One never knows about watchers, about optics. Half submerged in drowsiness, I registered a ripple in the heavy drape. Imagination, I first thought. Still air, sealed windows. True, the ancient wooden frame occasionally sighed a draught, yet never enough to stir the fabric with such deliberation. I thumbed the remote, silencing the television's drone. Silence bloomed, amplifying the thrumming beneath my ribs. Unease, an unfamiliar guest, settled in. I don't startle easily, but the unexplained knots my stomach. Leaning into the dimness, I watched. Again the curtain pulsed, a soft nudge from behind, like a hidden shoulder testing the barrier. I rose. Measured steps carried me toward the window. My hand lifted, reaching for the cloth. Then perception sharpened. A density, a blot darker than the ambient gloom, visible through the weave. Faint, yes, but undeniably present. Larger than any stray object, possessing the vague contours of a human silhouette, yet somehow smeared into the darkness itself. My throat constricted. A cold prickle traced my nape. Intruder? The thought sparked. Someone concealed behind the drape. Absurd. 7th floor. Access points limited to the front door and a diminutive fire escape window in the bedroom, perpetually locked. Too narrow for adult passage without a clamor. My pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against my bones. Retreating a step, then lunging for the light switch near the sofa, I flooded the room with sudden glare. I spun. The curtain hung, placid, inert. Nothing. I strode forward, swept the fabric aside. Emptiness greeted me. The sill bare, the street outside a familiar ribbon of nocturnal quiet. Rubbing my eyes, I scanned the living room's periphery, probing the shadowed corners cluttered with packing boxes and a defunct floor lamp. Solitude confirmed. Back on the sofa, I wrestled my breathing back to normal. My phone screen glowed. Mere minutes had elapsed since the curtain's first stir. It felt an age. A vice tightened around my chest. Tiredness, I reasoned, playing tricks. I killed the television's cyclopean eye and sought refuge in bed, attempting to banish the image. A futile effort. The silhouette lingered, imprinted on my mind's eye, standing sentinel behind the thin veil, observing. Sleep became a battleground of tossing, turning, clock-checking, eyes squeezed shut against the imagined presence. Dawn arrived, heralded by the alarm's shriek, finding me hollowed out, unrested. The subsequent days offered a reprieve. Routine reasserted itself. Return from work, lights flicked on, the microwave humming its monotonous tune. Evenings passed with television, sometimes in shadow, sometimes bathed in artificial light. Calm reigned until Sunday. Returning from the grocer around 6, laden with provisions, I entered the living room. The curtain was disturbed, pulled back just enough to suggest someone had recently peered out. A violation of habit. I always ensure they're fully drawn upon departure, especially on weekends. Unease, cold and sharp, returned. Groceries deposited. I approached the window, surveyed the street scene, parked cars, desultory pedestrians, the mundane tableau. Nothing amiss. My fingers brushed the curtain fabric. Cold. A knot formed low in my belly. I yanked it shut with unnecessary force, then commenced a sweep of the apartment. Front door, secure. Bedroom undisturbed. Bathroom, vacant. Possessions, accounted for. Nothing else seemed out of place. I sought out Mr. Silva, the building's caretaker, a taciturn man in his 50s, perpetually trailing the scent of disinfectant. I relayed my suspicion. Potential intrusion. He listened, impassive, affirming he'd monitored no unauthorized ascent. Faulty lock. He offered a slow headshake. Main doors, stairwells, elevator cameras, all watched, he assured me. No breaches. He was certain my sanctuary remained unviolated. Then a mumbled remark about the building's age, and he shuffled away, leaving me adrift. Paranoia began to sprout in the following days. Leaving for work became a ritual. Lock the door, jiggle the handle, check again before summoning the elevator. Returning, my first act was a beeline to the window. Sometimes the curtain remained closed. Other times, a sliver of opening greeted me. Not daily, but frequent enough to fray my nerves. I resorted to stratagem, a small piece of tape affixed across the curtain's edge. 2 days later, homecoming revealed the tape lying innocently on the floorboards. Impossible. No draft possesses such targeted strength. Another conversation with Mr. Silva yielded only sighs and familiar refrains. Nothing unusual observed, no unauthorized access beyond the lobby. I inspected window frames, searching for telltale scratches, pry marks. Nothing. One night, I staged a vigil in the living room, lights extinguished, television mute, waiting. Silence reigned, at least while wakefulness held. But surfacing near 2 in the morning, adrift in that liminal space between sleep and awareness, I saw it. The curtain distinctly parted. The room was a tapestry of deep shadows, precluding clarity, yet the gap was undeniable. My heart seized. A chill skated across my skin. Scrambling up, I ignited the lights. Rushing to the window, I tore the curtain wide. Emptiness. The street below slept. Was I sleepwalking? Descending into madness? These were not conditions I recognized in myself. A cheap webcam perched on my desk became my silent sentinel, aimed squarely at the window. I let it record through the night, reviewing the footage bleary-eyed in the morning. Initially, just grainy images of my own nocturnal restlessness. Then, darkness. Fast-forwarding through hours of stillness, I landed around 3:15 a.m. The curtain moved. A flicker, an almost imperceptible undulation. The webcam's resolution struggled, yet the fabric shifted, and for a fleeting instant, the impression of a hand's shape pushing from the hidden side materialized. One distinct motion, then stillness. Nausea churned. I replayed the segment again and again, not imagined. Something was there. I presented the digital evidence to Mr. Silva. A shrug. Perhaps a draft, he offered, the building settling. These old windows, he mused, they breathe funny sometimes, pockets of air. I insisted. The shape resembled a hand. He stared at the flickering screen, then at me, his gaze unreadable. He promised heightened vigilance regarding the hallway cameras. Nothing more. Frustration festered. The urge to flee, to break the lease, warred with the grim reality of my finances. Explaining this spectral disturbance to my employer felt like inviting ridicule. I resolved to confront this alone. My apartment became a subject of intense scrutiny, searching for hidden cavities, secret panels, testing hallway walls for yielding sections. The building, though aged, offered no architectural anomalies, and the curtain continued its silent performance. Some nights, tranquility. Others, a flicker caught in peripheral vision while engrossed in the television. A swift head turn always revealed stillness. Once, returning from the kitchen, glass of water in hand, having left the living room unlit, I found the curtain retracted by a foot or more, as if someone had boldly craned their head out to survey the street. My heart hammered violently. My hands trembled. I seized the fabric, yanking it shut, mind racing, grasping for logic, finding none. Online, I acquired an inexpensive motion sensor, placing it near the window. A test wave of my hand elicited the expected chirp. For several nights, it remained silent. Then a Thursday near midnight, slumbering fitfully in the bedroom, I heard it. A soft electronic beep from the living room. Instantly awake, skin prickling, sweat tracing my spine. I sprang up, snatched the baseball bat from the closet's depths, and burst into the living room. The sensor glowed, activated, but the room was empty. The curtain hung undisturbed. Bat held high. I scanned every shadow, every corner. Only my ragged breaths and the refrigerator's low hum broke the silence. I approached the sensor, reset it. Functionality seemed intact. Moving near it triggered another beep. Walking away restored silence. I stood by the window, gazing down. Distant lights glowed in the opposing building. No faces peered back. A lone car drifted past, headlights momentarily illuminating the pavement. The microwave clock displayed 12:07 a.m. I fought the image of the shape behind the curtain, pushed it down, though the tension remained coiled in my muscles long after. That weekend I sought counsel from neighbors, breaching the building's typical reserve. The woman in 704, weary-eyed, reported no strange occurrences but mentioned unreliable wiring, casting doubt on the security camera's efficacy. Scant comfort. The resident of 710 down the hall offered historical tidbits, the building's former life as a hotel, residual odd fixtures, but denied experiencing anything akin to my haunting. His gaze held a hint of pity, perhaps suspicion of my stability. I retreated, feeling the isolation sharpen. Back within my own four walls, the curtain was again ajar, a mere inch. Mail dropped unheeded onto the table as I stood, transfixed by that narrow breach. My chest tightened. I closed it, the motion automatic now. Then, the ritualistic search. Under the bed, behind furniture, closets probed, the utility space in the hall examined. Nothing. A headache pulsed behind my eyes, born of relentless tension. Sinking onto the sofa, I massaged my temples, desperately seeking a rational thread. None emerged. Noticing my shallow, rapid breathing, I forced myself into slower, deeper inhalations. An experiment. I left the curtain wide open, inviting whatever phantom force to reveal itself. Preparing dinner, I cast frequent glances toward the window. The fabric hung motionless, utterly passive. Later, attempting sleep, the familiar symphony of an old building began. Soft creaks from the living room floorboards, settling sounds magnified by the stillness. Normally innocuous, now each noise snagged my heightened nerves. I lay rigid, eyes fixed on the bedroom door, a sliver of streetlight filtering through the blinds, etching the furniture in faint relief against the profound dark. My heart pounded a heavy, insistent beat. An hour passed in this state of hypervigilance before I yielded. Rising, I illuminated every light in the living room, inspecting the window once more. The curtain remained exactly as I'd left it, wide open. A measure of relief washed over me, followed by a wave of self-recrimination. Foolish panic. Yet as I turned back toward the bedroom, a distinct brushing sound whispered against the fabric. I froze, spun around. Stillness. I approached, peered out into the silent street, the dark facade opposite. My own reflection stared back, etched with fatigue and anxiety. A sudden buzz from my pocket sent a jolt through me, merely a spam text. My hands shook. Extinguishing the living room lights, I retreated to the bedroom, locking the door. A flimsy gesture. I left the bedside lamp burning, a small defiance against the encroaching dark, and willed myself towards sleep. Saturday morning arrived with a new resolve. I confronted Mr. Silva about changing the locks. Possible, he conceded, but at my expense. That afternoon, armed with a new lock set from the hardware store, I performed the installation myself. A small measure of control restored, though it failed to address the fundamental mystery, the impossibility of entry, Silva's persistent denials. Still, I fortified my defenses. New lock, reinforced window seals, a small rubber wedge snugged beneath the front door. That night, sleep felt marginally less precarious. The following day, however, returning from a brief grocery run, I found the curtain parted again, perhaps 2 inches. My throat tightened. The new lock gleamed, untouched. The wedge remained steadfastly in place. I surged toward the window, yanked the curtain closed, gripping the fabric tightly, knuckles white. My heart felt lodged in my throat. Then a faint click emanated from the vicinity of the kitchen. I whirled, adrenaline flooding my system. Silence descended again. I stood motionless for a full minute, straining to hear anything further, only the refrigerator's hum. Cautiously, fists clenched, I crept toward the kitchen. Drawers, cupboards, under the sink, all checked. Order prevailed. No forced entry, no damp footprints, no shattered glass. Nothing. Returning to the living room, I collapsed onto the sofa, staring at the impassive window. Fear mingled with a rising tide of helpless anger. The urge to tear down the curtain, to board up the window, was potent, yet futile. Blindness wouldn't equate to safety. It would only prevent me from seeing the shape, should it reappear. So I exist now, day by uneasy day. Each homecoming carries the weight of anticipation. Will the curtain be drawn aside? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes a fleeting peripheral dance of fabric. Each check reveals only emptiness. Mr. Silva maintains his mantra. No unauthorized visitors grace my floor, and my neighbors profess ignorance. My options feel exhausted. Locks changed, sensors deployed, walls examined, video captured. Vigils yield nothing beyond frayed nerves and that single ambiguous clip. Now crossing the threshold each evening, my gaze flies instinctively to the window. Closure brings a shallow breath of relief. An opening invites the familiar plummet of dread. I don't know what resides behind it, or the mechanics of its persistence. I only know the chilling certainty of being watched, and the utter helplessness of my position. I remain tethered to this 7th-floor existence, taking it moment by moment, hoping for cessation, for explanation. Thus far there is only the nebulous shadow in the night, the silent, shifting curtain, and the constant cold certainty in my chest that I am not alone. That is the state of things. Here in this old apartment, whenever that curtain stirs, I freeze, I listen, I watch, and I wait. The moment he slid onto the vinyl back seat, the cab's stale air thickened. Expensive cologne warred with the alley's damp decay, a dissonance that snagged my attention before I even saw his eyes. Chipped flint darting left, right, everywhere but meeting mine in the mirror. His suit, charcoal silk that whispered tailoring fees I couldn't fathom, was a sharp anomaly against the late hour and the neighborhood's peeling paint symphony. But it was the destination, murmured like a secret, that truly coiled ice in my gut, some unnamed point miles beyond the city's final sprawl. Pulling from the curb, the engine's thrum felt unnervingly loud. This fare was charting a course away from the ordinary. "Where are you headed, Chief?" I kept my tone level, a practiced calm, finally catching his reflection. A hesitation, a flutter of unease crossing his features before smoothing over. His fingers drummed a syncopated, nervous rhythm on one knee. "North for the moment. Keep driving. I'll navigate." A curt nod was my only reply as I merged into the skeletal late-night traffic. Rain had recently lacquered the streets, turning neon signs into bleeding watercolor reflections in the puddles we sliced through. My gaze kept flicking to the mirror. He was maybe 50, silver threading his temples, a face that might once have been called handsome before tension carved permanent tributaries across it. "Sal," I reminded myself, "just drive." Silence stretched between us, punctuated only by the hypnotic shush of wet tires and the intermittent, static-laced squawk from the dispatch radio, a voice from a world rapidly receding behind us. The urge to fill the void with small talk, the game, the rain, anything, pricked at me, a driver's habit. But the rigid line of his shoulders, the sheer concentration radiating from him, silenced the impulse. This man wasn't buying conversation. As the last tendrils of a city relinquished their grip, replaced by darkened storefronts, and then just dark. He spoke again, his voice startlingly close. "Next to right. There's an old farmstead, maybe 20 miles down this artery." I obeyed, turning onto a narrow two-lane vein, plunging into unadulterated blackness. The comforting glow of streetlights had been amputated miles back. Only my headlamps clawed a tunnel through the night, illuminating nothing but the road ahead and the ghostly green aura of the dashboard. "Long haul from downtown," I ventured, curiosity finally breaching my professional dam. A non-committal grunt was the reply, his gaze locked forward. "Sometimes," he murmured after a beat, his voice dry as old parchment, "the place you need to be isn't where you started." The cryptic remark settled heavily in the cab, amplifying my unease. My knuckles whitened on the wheel. Every pothole jolted. Every curve felt like a potential ambush. Houses became sporadic memories, then vanished entirely, supplanted by immense breathing fields and the occasional skeletal barn sighing in the wind. "So, I cleared my throat, aiming for casual. "What kind of business drags a fella out here this time of night?" He shifted, a rustle of expensive fabric, and my pulse leaped as his hand dipped inside his jacket. Gun? Knife? My imagination flared, but the hand reappeared, clutching only a silver flask. He took a long, deliberate pull before answering. The word clipped. "Business. The sort best conducted beyond curious gazes." I swallowed, my mouth suddenly arid. What clandestine dealings required such profound isolation? Nothing sanctioned by daylight, that much was certain. Regret began to sour in my throat. Picking up this fare felt like a pivotal mistake. But the meter was climbing, a siren song of necessity. We were deep in nowhere, and I needed the cash too acutely to engineer an escape now. Minutes dripped by, each measured by the slow sweep of the second hand and the oppressive quiet. I fiddled with the radio dial, seeking connection, a voice, anything. Nothing but the hiss of empty space. We were beyond reach. "Turn here," Kalen commanded abruptly, pointing towards a barely discernible dirt track choked by weeds, almost invisible until his gesture. I eased the cab onto the rutted path, the suspension groaning in protest. My headlights momentarily caught a weathered sign. Its paint flaked away, leaving only spectral warnings. No trespassing. Private prop. "You certain about this?" The tremor in my voice was unmistakable now. He leaned forward, his proximity unnerving, his breath tinged with expensive liquor. "Quite certain, Sal. Drive on." The dirt road snaked endlessly, burrowing deeper into dense woods. Branches clawed like skeletal fingers against the cab's flanks. Rocks pinged sharply against the undercarriage, each impact a minor heart attack. Getting stranded here wasn't just inconvenient. It felt potentially final. Then abruptly, the trees fell away. A clearing opened, dominated by the hulking silhouette of an ancient farmhouse. Paint peeled like sunburnt skin, shutters hung at drunken angles. No lights pierced the gloom, no other vehicles disturbed the scene. It had the vacant stare of abandonment. "Stop here," Kalen ordered. I braked, letting the engine idle, its rumble violating the profound stillness. He didn't move, simply leaned back, eyes closing for a moment as if in prayer or preparation. Mr. Kalen?" I prompted after a charged silence. "We're here. Meter reads 8750. His eyes snapped open, locking onto mine with startling intensity. "The journey isn't concluded. Kill the engine and wait." A knot of pure, cold fear tightened in my stomach. "Look, I don't know what this is, but this ain't right. How about I just head back to the city? No charge." His hand revisited the inside of his jacket. This time it wasn't the flask. Cold blue-black steel glinted dully in the dashboard light. My breath hitched. The barrel pointed unwaveringly at my chest. "The engine, Sal," he repeated, his voice a deadly calm whisper. "And the radio stays silent. No signal out here anyway." My hands, suddenly disconnected from my will, trembled as I turned the key. Silence crashed down, absolute and terrifying. The moon, a sliver of bone in the ink-dark sky, cast long, distorted shadows across the overgrown yard, transforming familiar shapes into monstrous suggestions. "Better," Kalen breathed, lowering the weapon slightly, though it remained a tangible threat in his lap. "Now, we observe." "Observe what?" My voice was a threadbare whisper. He offered no answer, his gaze sweeping the darkness beyond the windshield. I followed his stare, straining my eyes against the gloom, searching for... What? An eternity compressed into minutes ticked past. Then, a flicker. Movement at the tree line's edge. Another vehicle, gliding towards us with its lights extinguished, a phantom emerging from the woods. It stopped alongside my cab. Two figures disentangled themselves from its interior. Even bathed in weak moonlight, the shapes they carried were unmistakably long guns. Kalen finally pushed his door open, stepping out into the charged air to meet them. Their voices were low murmurs, swallowed by the night, conspiratorial whispers I couldn't decipher. I remained frozen, a statue behind the wheel, scarcely daring to breathe, convinced any sudden movement would shatter the fragile, dangerous tableau. It felt like hours, but mere minutes likely passed before Kalen returned, sliding back into the passenger seat. The other car reversed silently, melting back into the trees from whence it came. "Take me back to the metropolis," he instructed, his tone utterly commonplace, as if we'd paused for scenic appreciation. With hands that still shook, I coaxed the engine back to life, my mind a frantic scramble. A drop? An exchange? Weapons, drugs, something far darker. Whatever covenant had been sealed in that clearing, I wanted infinite distance from it. The return journey was shrouded in the same thick silence, the gun now hidden, yet its presence palpably filled the small space. As the first glimmers of the city's light pollution stained the horizon, Kalen finally spoke again. "You handled yourself adequately tonight, Sal," he observed, almost conversationally. "Your discretion will be generously acknowledged." I managed a numb nod, distrusting my voice. He directed me to a bland apartment block, anonymous brick and glass. Before exiting, he pressed a thick fold of cash into my hand, far exceeding the meter's demand. "Remember," he said, his eyes holding mine one last time as he stepped onto the curb, "you witnessed nothing tonight, for your own well-being and that of your family." The threat, elegantly veiled, landed like a physical blow. I watched him vanish into the building's lobby, then just sat, gripping the wheel, the tremors returning. One part of me screamed to drive straight to the nearest precinct, spill everything, but the larger part, the part picturing my wife, my kids asleep in their beds, knew that silence was the only currency I could afford. Pulling away, heading towards the distant promise of home, I tried to scrub the night's events from my mind. A silent vow formed. No more graveyard shifts, no more enigmatic fares beckoning me towards the fringes. Daylight runs, familiar streets, predictable destinations. That would be my penance, my refuge. Yet even as I swore it, I knew the memory of this night was now permanent cargo. Kalen's haunted eyes, the skeletal farmhouse under the bone moon, the chilling weight of his final words. They would stalk my sleep. And every time the door opened and a new fare slid in, a sliver of that fear would return, sharp and cold. Is this just another ride? Or is this the beginning of the next darkness? Emergency communications, line 1. My voice, a practiced instrument of calm, navigated another thread in the city's tapestry of urban distress, a structure fire blooming miles away. 12 hours deep, the calls a relentless tide. It was the sheer sensory overload, perhaps, that nearly masked the insistent blink of my fuel gauge. Nearly. This work sharpens you to the peripheral, the subtle tells. A tremor woven into a plea, the background whispers that betray the spoken word, the rhythms that pulse life or its imminent absence. So, pulling into the sterile fluorescence of the apex fuel stop off Highway 87, a discord hummed beneath the surface before logic could pin it down. The overhead lights bled onto deserted asphalt, stark under the pre-dawn sky. A vacuum existed here, that suspended moment between the last echoes of night and the first breath of morning. Only one other vehicle shared the space, a bruised sedan, its silhouette marred by a missing rear light. Card sliding into the pump's reader, a voice startled me too close. "Pardon me?" I pivoted. A woman stood there, violating the unspoken bubble of late-night solitude. 30s, maybe, draped in a creased suit that clung oddly to the 3 a.m. stillness. Mascara tracked faint gray rivers down her cheeks. She shivered, though the spring air held no real chill. "I'm terribly sorry," she began, twisting her hands, a small frantic motion. "My car gave out down the road mile or two back. Phone's completely dead. Could you possibly... a lift? Just to the next town? My sister's there." 8 years, tethered to the pulse of emergencies, trains a different kind of listening. Her narrative felt thin. The suit, though rumpled, bore no grime from a highway trek. And her sudden appearance, no sign of her walking the shoulder as I'd approached. "There's a phone inside," I offered, nodding toward the brightly lit convenience store. Through the glass, I saw the attendant's silhouette, watching. "They'd surely let you call your sister." Her face flickered, a fleeting shadow, something hard beneath the desperation, before the mask of vulnerability snapped back. "Please," she urged, stepping nearer, invading my space again. "It feels exposed out here. Alone. You seem kind, like someone who helps." It was then, in the polished curve of my car's side window, I caught the reflection. The sedan's passenger door easing open, a silent hinge in the quiet dark. "Actually," I said, my tone deliberately level as I withdrew the nozzle from my tank, "I can offer something better. I work emergency communications. Let me get someone official out here to assist you." My hand moved toward my work phone, the direct line to patrol units humming in my pocket. She reacted with unnerving swiftness, her hand clamping onto my forearm. "No police." The plea vanished, replaced by a raw command. Fingernails bit into my skin. She tugged, pulling me toward the waiting sedan. "Get in the car, now. Don't make this complicated." Instinct, honed by countless simulated crises and real-world emergencies, took over. I ripped my arm free, simultaneously slamming my palm onto my car's panic button. The alarm screamed, tearing the night's fabric. Retreating toward the store's entrance, I saw the attendant already had a phone pressed to his ear. Headlights surged on the highway, growing closer. A man burst from the sedan's passenger side, spitting curses as he charged forward. The woman lunged again, but the automatic door hissed open, and I was inside. The attendant, Gene, a retired security man I'd later learn, was rounding the counter, a wooden bat held ready. "Sheriff's deputies, 3 minutes," he stated, his voice a low anchor as he positioned himself between me and the glass door. Outside, tires shrieked. The sedan fishtailed out of the lot, leaving scorched signatures on the pavement. Tremors ran through my hands as I keyed my work phone, relaying the sedan's description, its direction, the missing tail light, to the familiar voices on the other end. My colleagues. Minutes later, the Apex fuel lot pulsed, red and blue, patrol car lights painting strobing patterns across the pumps. The ensuing investigation uncovered a chilling mosaic, similar incidents dotting gas stations along Highway 87. Women approached while alone, solicited for rides, then attempts made to force them into waiting cars. Some had escaped. Others hadn't been so lucky. My finely tuned dispatcher's intuition, the detective surmised, had likely rerouted my fate from statistic to witness. Jean waved away my attempt to pay for the gas. "You read it right," he said, escorting me to my car after my statement was taken. Most folks want to help, don't pause to question. Kindness shouldn't mean shutting off your gut. The following weeks saw the Apex station transform. Jean persuaded the owner, brighter perimeter lighting, more cameras watching the lonely pumps. Signs appeared, warning patrons of common ruses, offering the store phone for emergencies, free of charge. The graveyard shift doubled. Jean now had a partner, Maya. I found myself stopping by more often, tank full or not, sometimes bearing coffee. We traded night shift anecdotes, the strange and the mundane, but the conversation often circled back to vigilance, to looking out. One evening, I found Jean patiently showing a young woman how to wield her keys between her knuckles. "Better to have the knowledge and not need it," he advised her, "than the other way around." She wasn't the only one. The station was becoming an unlikely sanctuary, a node of awareness for those traveling through the vulnerable hours. They apprehended the pair eventually, 3 states away, ensnared while attempting the same predatory play at another isolated outpost. The woman in the suit hadn't been their first accomplice. Their method involved preying on vulnerable individuals, coercing them into becoming bait, forging a chain reaction of fear. Now, when the dispatch console lights up with a stranded motorist call, that night surfaces. We dispatch aid, naturally, but a cautionary note now accompanies it, a flag for potential manipulation. Being vigilant isn't the same as being unfeeling. It's about intelligent compassion. A rookie dispatcher recently asked how I maintained composure during high-stakes calls. I told her about the gas station, about how true danger doesn't always arrive with sirens wailing. Sometimes it whispers, cloaked in plausible lies and practiced desperation. Trust your training protocols, I advised, but equally trust that deep thrum of unease when the pieces don't fit. In our line of work, that instinct isn't just self-preservation. It's a shield for others, too. The Apex fuel stop has become something of a landmark for local law enforcement. Patrol cars make regular check-ins, sharing a nod with Jean and Maya. Their quiet vigilance has reportedly diffused several potentially dangerous encounters. Looking back, the alternate endings to my own night flicker sometimes, but mostly I dwell on the unexpected community forged in its wake, a network woven from shared awareness, a refusal to let fear eclipse empathy. Because that was the enduring lesson. Genuine kindness doesn't demand blindness to risk or the sacrifice of safety. It thrives in building safer harbors, illuminating those hushed hours when the world seems paused, ensuring no one navigates the darkness utterly alone. the first time registered as mere background noise. A Tuesday, sun slanting through the boutique window where I, Alara, arranged silk scarves, the air thick with the scent of leather and expensive perfume. He materialized beside a display of handbags, unremarkable, middle-aged, adrift in a polo shirt and khaki trousers, the sort of man whose features blur the moment you look away. He gestured vaguely towards the street, towards my crimson coupe parked curbside. A query about its transmission, oddly specific, floated from him. My reply was courteous, deliberately hazy. He drifted away. 3 days dissolved. I was miles away, sharing lukewarm soup and confidences with my sister, Chloe, in a sun-drenched cafe. Then a shadow fell across our table. The same man, the same shirt, the same peculiar interest in my car's mechanics. A chill traced its way down my spine, leaching the flavor from my lunch. "Ilara? You know him?" Chloe murmured, her gaze sharp as he retreated towards the door. A silent shake of my head was my only answer, but a cold knot tightened deep in my gut. The ensuing fortnight saw him bloom, a persistent weed, in the periphery of my life. Outside the rhythmic thud of the gym's baseline, near the overflowing bins behind the supermarket, ghosting the edge of the cinema car park as I waited for friends. Always the car. Questions spun like sticky webs. Always that fraction too close, his gaze lingering, opaque, long after the forced exchange concluded. Each appearance bled the color from coincidence, leaving the stark outline of intent. Perhaps he's just a vintage car enthusiast. Maya, my colleague at the boutique, offered, her brow furrowed. Yet she began walking me to my crimson coupe after closing, her phone held casually aloft, capturing the glint of his license plate when his nondescript sedan materialized yet again in our small lot. His inquiries began to morph, burrowing deeper. The name of my mechanic, the garage for oil changes, the specific arteries of tarmac I navigated between home and work. It felt like cartography, my daily existence meticulously plotted, each answer a pin pushed into his invisible map. I offered fictitious routes, imaginary garages. His smile stretched thin, a knowing rictus that suggested he saw straight through the flimsy fabrication. I scrambled my routines, unfamiliar avenues, distant grocery aisles, cafes chosen at random. Yet, he surfaced. Amidst the hushed reverence of a bookstore I'd never entered, querying fuel efficiency. Between rows of fragrant rose bushes at a garden center 30 miles adrift from my apartment, musing on tire treads. The police listened, recorded details with practiced detachment, but confessed their hands were tied. No overt threats, no laws explicitly fractured. Document everything, they advised. Vary your patterns. Stay vigilant. A personal safety app now pulsed silently on my phone, broadcasting my coordinates to trusted contacts. Chloe helped install watchful electronic eyes above my doorway. At the boutique, Maya orchestrated a buddy system for breaks and locking up. Friends wove a net of check-in calls and texts, ensuring solitude never stretched too thin. Still he materialized, a phantom tethered to my movements, his automotive questions gaining a sharper insistence, the smile never warming the flat landscape of his eyes. One evening, immersed in the quiet ritual of inventory before a major sale, the boutique wrapped in twilight, I glanced up. Across the street, silhouetted within his car, sat Silas. He'd been there for hours, an unmoving sentinel. Maya's vehicle sat beside mine, a familiar shape, but she'd departed an hour prior, whisked away by her boyfriend, Liam. The click of the lock engaging echoed in the sudden quiet as I secured the boutique door. His own car door opened. He stepped out, ambled across the asphalt. "Lovely evening," he called, his voice unnervingly casual. "Perfect for a drive, wouldn't you say? How's that transmission performing?" My fingers trembled, betraying me as they fumbled with the keys, but I willed steadiness into my voice. "My brother's meeting me," I lied, the words tasting metallic. "He's police, due any second." A flicker of hesitation crossed Silas's face, then the empty smile returned. "Just being neighborly," he offered, though a new abrasive edge roughened his tone. "Funny thing, my own transmission's been acting up. Thought perhaps we could compare notes." At that exact moment, twin beams of light sliced through the dusk. Liam hadn't driven off. He'd been waiting, vigilant, just around the corner. His engine rumbled reassuringly as he pulled alongside me. "Everything all right here, Elara?" Liam's voice was calm, steady. Silas retreated, hands lifting in a gesture of mock innocence. "Just car talk," he murmured, but his eyes, fixed on mine, held an unnerving, predatory intensity. He slid back into his vehicle and melted into the night, leaving behind a residue of fear, a certainty that this was far from concluded. The following morning I sought the sterile authority of the courts, armed with a sheaf of meticulously compiled evidence, photographs, timestamps, locations, witness accounts from Maya and Chloe. The narrative of relentless pursuit was undeniable. A judge granted the restraining order, a fragile paper shield offering consequence, if not absolute prevention. News rippled through the local merchant community. Shopkeepers exchanged descriptions, alerts, solidarity. The boutique's security system received an upgrade. The cafe implemented new training, staff now versed in recognizing the subtle signs of stalking. Notices regarding customer safety appearing near the entrance. At the community center, I enrolled in a self-defense course led by Anya Sharma. It was more than just parrying blows. It was about reclaiming space, trusting the primal hum of intuition, wielding voice as weapon. Politeness is never a shield worth dying behind, Anya stated, her gaze direct. Chloe suggested selling the car, erasing the focal point of his obsession. I refused. If I dismantle my life piece by piece, he's already won, I countered. Instead, I had mechanics sweep it for hidden trackers. The windows darkened with obscuring film. A dash cam, vigilant both fore and aft, became my silent recording witness. Small acts of defiance, shoring up a sense of control. The order held, mostly. Silas ceased direct approaches, but his presence lingered. Fleeting glimpses from parked cars across busy streets. The unnerving sense of being observed, catalogued. The police, while unable to prove continued pursuit beyond the order's boundary, increased patrols along my known routes. Other women began to step forward, sharing hushed stories, not always of Silas, but of men like him, men who weaponized mundane questions, who twisted shared interests into instruments of intimidation. A network coalesced, organic and resilient, sharing warnings, offering support. The boutique, once just a place of commerce, began hosting monthly workshops on safety, boundaries, recognizing the crimson flags of predatory behavior. What began in solitary fear transformed into a communal resource, teaching not just vigilance, but solidarity. Last week, a young woman, barely more than a girl, entered the boutique, her nervousness palpable. She spoke of a man, persistent questions about her car at her after-school job. Without hesitation, I connected her to our burgeoning web, the sympathetic ear of a specific police liaison, Anya Sharma's self-defense insights, the collective vigilance of the community advocates. Sometimes I still see Silas, a flicker at the edge of vision, but the fear is different now, buffered by awareness, by the knowledge that I am seen, supported. His power attenuates with every shared story, every business refusing tacit complicity, every woman learning the fierce, unwavering authority of her own instincts. My crimson coupe, once a magnet for dread, now feels like a statement. I keep it polished, maintained, a tangible reminder of resilience, of refusing to be driven from my own life. Those questions, once dripping with menace, now echo as the futile attempts of a man trying to map a territory he could never truly conquer. That was his fundamental miscalculation. The car was merely the key he chose, the innocuous tool to gain proximity, to gather data. But in doing so, he inadvertently taught us all, a vital lesson. There are no just questions when their purpose is to chart your vulnerabilities. Trust the tremor beneath the surface. Document the pattern. And never, ever underestimate the quiet, unyielding strength of a community standing watch. The coffee's sweetness struck first, a cloying, unnatural counterpoint to the bitter roast, a flavor instantly alien. By the time the wrongness registered, a fog was already creeping at the edges of my sight. My limbs suddenly anchors. Across the polished dining table, the faces of our hosts, Silas and Mavis, warped. Their practiced benevolence curdled into something sharp, predatory. Horror bloomed cold in my chest. Our sanctuary, this carefully chosen escape, had just revealed itself as the trap. It began, as these things often do, with exhaustion. Ilara and I, frayed threads in the city's relentless loom, craved severance. Months we'd scrolled, seeking refuge, until Briarwood Lodge materialized on screen, a Victorian jewel nestled deep in rolling hills, presided over by a couple who'd supposedly traded ambition for tranquility. Images whispered of mullioned windows, sprawling gardens, breakfasts cooked with love. It promised the precise balm our weary souls demanded. We arrived under a bruised twilight sky that Friday, tires whispering on the gravel path leading to the lodge. It stood more imposing, more intricately carved than pixels could capture, its veranda draped in shadows. Silas and Mavis met us on the porch, effusiveness radiating. "Welcome, welcome," Mavis chirped, her smile wide beneath sharp, observant eyes. "So thrilled to have you." Silas, lean and weathered, hoisted our luggage. "Long drive? Let's get you settled." His voice was smooth as river stones. Ascending the groaning staircase, the air thick with the scent of baking spices and aged timber, ghosts of comfort. I felt the city's grip momentarily loosen. Our room, a haven of dark wood, dominated by a vast, curtained bed. Wildflowers, artlessly arranged, graced an antique dresser. "Supper's in an hour," Mavis called up. "Do explore the grounds." That hour, Ilara and I traced paths through gardens heavy with the scent of damp earth and late blooms, fingers interlaced, the city's static fading with each step. At dinner, we joined the other occupants, a silver-haired pair marking an anniversary, a young family whose children seemed unnaturally subdued, around a grand mahogany table. The food was impeccable. Roasted game hen, potatoes glistening with herbs, greens plucked hours before. Silas ensured glasses never emptied. Mavis spun tales of the lodge's restoration, their flight from corporate chains 5 years prior. Later, cocooned in our room, Ilara murmured, "This is perfect." Sleep claimed us swiftly, ushered in by the gentle chorus of night insects beyond the open window. Saturday unfolded in languid perfection. A hike through sun-dappled woods, guided by Silas's hand-drawn map. Returning to find Mavis offering warm, spiced biscuits. An afternoon surrendered to books on the porch swing, punctuated by murmured greetings with fellow guests. Yet as evening bled into the dining room, a dissonance crept in. Perhaps the wine fostered suspicion, but Silas and Mavis seemed locked in silent, coded exchanges. And the young family, hadn't they spoken of departing that morning? They sat now, listless, their eyes vacant. I tried to dismiss the prickling unease and unwelcome static. But reaching for my after-dinner coffee, I found Mavis watching me, an unnerving stillness in her gaze, a flicker of anticipation. I raised the cup, sipped. There it was, that saccharine undertow beneath the dark brew. A frantic pulse hammered against my ribs. "Ilara?" I choked out, turning. The name dissolved as I saw her slump, eyes rolling white. A desperate surge to rise, to act, met immovable weight. The room tilted, colors bleeding at the edges. My body betrayed me, sliding bonelessly towards the floor. Through the collapsing tunnel of my vision, the last image. Silas and Mavis looming, their welcoming masks finally shed, replaced by identical chilling grins. Consciousness returned sluggishly, reluctantly, to the sensation of cold stone beneath me. Damp air clung heavy, thick with the smell of mold and decay, punctuated by the rhythmic plink of dripping water. As shadows resolved into shapes in the Stygian gloom, the truth solidified. A cellar. Panic, sharp and icy, surged as memory rushed back. The lodge, the tainted coffee, Ilara. Movement was a Herculean effort. The drug lingered, a leaden shroud over muscle and nerve. I forced my head to turn. My breath hitched. Ilara lay beside me, utterly still. Beyond her, other forms huddled in the darkness. The anniversary couple, the quiet family. "Awake, are we?" Silas's voice slid from the shadows, startlingly close. He materialized, holding aloft an oil lantern that threw his features into grotesque relief. "Excellent. Less diverting when they sleep through the proceedings." What are you doing?" The question emerged, thin, tremulous. Silas offered a smile devoid of any warmth. "Why, we're providing the ultimate hospitality, taking care of our special guests, permanently." Mavis appeared at his shoulder, her expression now glacial, appraising. "You city types," she sighed, a parody of sympathy. "Always so trusting. so desperate for the rustic fantasy, the charming proprietors. It never occurs, does it, that the wolves might prefer sheep who wander willingly into the fold? My thoughts scrambled, clawing for reason. "Why?" I rasped. Silas knelt, the lantern light glinting in his eyes. "Why? The exquisite purity of it, my friend. The control. Can you fathom the intoxication? Watching hope curdle into understanding? Knowing no one is searching, not yet?" Nausea churned. This wasn't mere cruelty, it was sport. We were playthings for monsters disguised as hosts. "Please," I begged, my gaze flicking to Alara's inert form. "Let her go. Take me, whatever you want. Just let her go." Mavis laughed, a brittle, shattering sound. "Touching, but inefficient. We find couples offer richer possibilities. Shared terror is so much more resonant." While they spoke, my mind raced, seeking purchase, an angle, any sliver of hope. My body remained a useless weight, trapped, miles from anywhere. No one knew our precise location. Days before alarm bells might ring. Silas, reading the despair blooming on my face, patted my cheek with false solicitude. "Patience, we'll savor this. You're on holiday after all. No need to rush." They turned, ascending stone steps I hadn't noticed. A heavy door groaned, then slammed, plunging us back into absolute darkness. Time dissolved in that lightless void. I drifted between drugged torpor and lucid terror, unsure if hours or days bled away. I whispered Ilara's name, called to the others. Only the ceaseless drip and the furtive scuttling of unseen creatures answered. As sensation slowly seeped back into my limbs, a desperate imperative took hold. Rope bit into my wrists, cinched tight but not strangling. They intended us aware, responsive. Ignoring the searing pain, I began worrying the knots, the rough fibers tearing at my skin. Eternity stretched between each minuscule gain. Then finally, blessedly, a loosening. Trembling fingers fumbled with the bindings on my ankles. Free. I crawled across the cold floor to Ilara. Her chest rose and fell shallowly. Alive, thank God, but lost to the drug's grip. I worked frantically at her ropes, then moved to the others, freeing them into the same terrifying limbo. Escape. But how? Groping along the damp stone walls, I searched. The door above was impregnable oak. But then, a faint current of air. Following it led my hands upward to a small high window near the ceiling, grimed and narrow. Barely passable, perhaps, but it was the only fissure in our tomb. I scrabbled, finding a shard of wood, digging furiously at the mortar disintegrating around the window frame. My fingers screamed, nails splintering, blood smearing the stone, but the frantic rhythm consumed me. Just as the frame began to yield, footsteps echoed overhead. Silas, Mavis, returning. A terrible clarity seized me. There wasn't time, not for everyone. With a final guttural heave, the window tore free. I scrambled onto something unseen, boosted myself towards the opening. As I forced my body through the narrow gap, the cellar door below crashed open. "You, stop!" Silas's enraged bellow pursued me as I tumbled out onto dew-soaked grass. I ran, a primal, mindless flight. Lungs burning, legs churning with borrowed strength. Through the manicured gardens, now menacing under the moon's cold gaze. Down the gravel drive, sharp stones biting into bare feet. Onto the asphalt ribbon of the main road, running until the world became a blur of motion and fear. Headlights sliced the darkness. I stumbled into their beam, a ragged, wild-eyed apparition. The driver, face pale with shock, fumbled for a phone. Within hours, flashing lights painted Briarwood Lodge in stark, revealing strokes. They found them. Ilara, the others, alive, just barely clinging to consciousness. Silas and Mavis offered no resistance. Their monstrous game abruptly ended. The subsequent investigation unearthed a chilling history. Years of disappearances, vanished tourists. Their last known destination, this idyllic, lethal inn. The aftermath remains a fractured mosaic. Sterile hospital rooms, hollow-eyed police officers, the quiet drone of a therapist's voice. Ilara and I held tight to each other, attempting to piece back together a world suddenly revealed as fragile, treacherous. But the guilt, it became my shadow. I had fled, left them. Yes, my escape triggered the rescue, a fact repeated like a mantra. Yet in that desperate moment of squeezing through stone and grime, self-preservation had been absolute, eclipsing all else. Years have passed. We built a semblance of normalcy, but sleep still sometimes splinters, returning me to the damp chill of the cellar. I see Ilara's face, vulnerable in drugged repose, unaware of my desertion. I hear Silas's furious roar echoing in the dark passage of my escape. Reason insists I did the only thing possible, that my flight was their salvation. But reason offers little comfort against the insidious whisper, coward, that surfaces in the deepest hours of the night. Now the sight of a charming country inn, a welcoming B&B sign, triggers not nostalgia, but a visceral clench of fear. Because Briarwood Lodge taught me a brutal lesson etched onto my soul. Beneath the most inviting surfaces, unimaginable horrors can wait. Trust is fragile, safety an illusion. And sometimes the dream vacation is just the beginning of the nightmare.